Hello, welcome all tonight. Thank you so much for coming back for this week's webinar. And tonight we're going to be talking about a super important topic, especially right now. So tonight we're going to be talking about how you can excel and really maximize your potential when you're learning at home or doing virtual learning. So it can definitely be a really tough adjustment for a lot of students, but I think with the right tips and the right setup, it can definitely be really beneficial to them and they can still learn a lot in the virtual learning setup for sure. All right, today we'll be really focusing on advice for your students in grades 4 to 12, but a lot of the same principles are definitely relevant for younger age students as well. And if you have any questions about specific age students or problems you've had, please, throughout the whole webinar, if anything comes up, please feel free to comment it in the chat, and I'll make sure to address it at our Q&A session at the end of the webinar tonight. Awesome. Again, my name is Grant, and I'm a 5th grade teacher, and I'm a virtual teacher, so I think I definitely have a good idea of how my students learn best in virtual learning. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is what issues do students and parents typically face when they're learning at home? So I think the first thing is it can be really difficult for parents and teachers to gauge the student's progress when we're doing virtual learning, right? So the tests are more difficult to administer, less accurate. There's less interaction with the students face to face, so it's hard to really gauge their understanding of the material. And it just becomes a more difficult process to make sure they're progressing correctly. So that's definitely one of the most important reasons or challenges faced by virtual learning, but we'll have some tips to address that for sure. And then often a big problem can be learning at home in a place they're not used to really sitting down and learning a lot. It can be really, there's a lot of distractions, right? There's no one making sure they're not going on TV, video games, anything like that. So it can definitely be super distracting when you're learning in the home environment rather than going to school or somewhere you're used to learning. And that can definitely reduce productivity and again, reduce the student's progress. So we'll have some tips for addressing that as well. And then a big thing that I think is often overlooked is just the amount of exercise that students get when they are going to school and just walking around from class to class. It can be something you take for granted. And then in the virtual learning, when you're just clicking from class to class rather than walking, it's something you lose. And so that lack of exercise and movement is definitely can affect their ability to learn and accept new knowledge points and learn new content and focus often. It can be definitely different without that element of exercise. So we'll also have a tip to adjust that as well. And then lastly, it can be really difficult to be efficient and like stay on track, right? So you'll deadlines will come faster. You'll kind of days might be not used to their full potential, and so students might lose track. And so we definitely super important skill is developing that ability to kind of manage your own time, which a lot of students haven't yet developed, but we'll talk about tips for developing that as well. Awesome. So the first thing, or the next thing I want to talk about is why it's important. Some parents might be like, well, if they just miss 1 year of school, is that really the end of the world? And I want to emphasize how important specifically grades 4 to 12 are for developing students. And that kind of stems from this gap that we see in the U.S. education system, where it really, a lot of the curriculum, specifically for math and STEM-related classes, kind of flatlines during middle school and then takes a huge step up in high school. So missing any of those middle school years or high school years and kind of losing that if you to a less productive virtual learning year can be definitely detrimental to their overall progress and preparing them for success in both high school, college, and beyond. So students during this critical time of really that 4th to 8th grade, they're either getting ahead of the average or they're falling behind. And again, that stems from that kind of just really low average curriculum here in the United States for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then they're not ready for that 9th grade step, and that really sets them off track. And so again, it's super important that we keep these students on track this year. And that's the whole reason I'm doing this webinar, is because I really want students to be able to get the most and out of their virtual learning experience. And for some students who learn in certain ways, it might even be better for them learning virtually. And so if you can really maximize their potential in that way, you can find out what works for them. And that's really what's important, right? Awesome, awesome. So let's get to our tips now. tip number one here, this one is super, super important. It all starts from this. So you really want that ability to create a designated learning space. So students go to school and they're used to their school environment. They have their locker, they have their desk they usually sit in, and the smells that surround them, the ambiance that surrounds them. They're used to learning in that environment, right? So virtual learning, that's whole process and that whole years of development to learn in that area has been just completely disrupted when they're trying to learn at home now, especially for students who don't typically do homework at home, or maybe they finish their homework at school and whatnot, or an after-school program of sorts, or after-school classes. Um, they're not used to learning at home at all. And this can be really, really jarring for students, right? They really need to develop that space and get used to consistently learning in this new space. And so that's where this first tip comes from. So as a student, what can you do? Well, the first thing you need to do is just reflect on yourself. Determine where do you or how do you learn best? Is there a spot in the house that you really you've been doing homework at for years, that you're good at learning and being productive in that spot? Maybe it's your desk in your room. Maybe it's your kitchen table, right? Maybe it's your bed if you want to have a setup on your lap. It could be anywhere, right? It's whatever works for you. That's what's super important. So you need to consider that. Where are you going to be productive? And then the second step is, once you determine that area, you need to clear the clutter from that area. That is super, super important. Like, you have to have a clean space, and so that helps you have a clean mind and then accept that new knowledge. If everything's disorganized, the material you're trying to learn is going to come off in a disorganized, disheveled way, and it's just going to be harder to learn, right? Okay, so as a parent, how can you help your student do this? Again, these tips, it's going to vary by the age of your student, right? So if your student's closer to the high school or end of middle school, they may be able to take some of this more responsibility on their own. If we're talking about a younger student that's in third or fourth grade, you might want to help them along in this process. And so ways the parents can help is help your child decide and find a place that works best for them. Maybe you have a room that's for an office for the parents, and you could set up a new desk or a desk in there so that they're not doing all their homework in the bedroom or somewhere they're used to not being productive, right? So separating these rooms could be super awesome. If that's not an option, of course, you can always use maybe the kitchen table or something, or just picking this area and helping them find that area is super, super important. And then the second thing is, as I mentioned, the importance here is really developing that consistent space where they're consistently used to studying in that area and being productive in that area. So to develop that consistency, it might require a little nudge or push from you. So make sure they're consistently studying that area. We can set up an awesome area that's perfect for virtual learning, but if they're not studying there, you're not going to get the same effects because they won't get used to studying and kind of develop that same school atmosphere in that area unless they're consistently day in, day out studying there. So definitely help them along with that. And then, of course, help them keep it, or make sure they keep it clutter-free, because, again, that's super important. Okay, so what does a good, effective learning space look like versus an ineffective learning space? So I have an example here for you guys. This is the same desk, but one student kind of has set up a really effective learning space on the right here, and then another student has set up an ineffective learning space kind of on the left. So some elements of this, obviously, it's very clear at first just looking at it. This is super messy. We have clutter everywhere. There's nowhere really to write and work on their homework. They have a coffee that could spill on the computer right here. They have a half-eaten sandwich. It's just a mess, right? This is not what you want. If you're learning in an environment like this, everything's going to be all over the place, and it's going to be hard to pick up new information and focus. There's way too many distractions, right? You have all of these words on these papers that their eyes might be drawn to and distracted to during class. You have Post-its on the screen. This is just super, super disorganized, and you're going to lose all of the important information and just be completely distracted during virtual learning, right? On the right, however, we have an awesome example of a great setup for virtual learning. They have a clean, orderly desk, that very limited distractions. Like there's not much to look at here. There's not much to point out because there isn't much clutter or anything to distract the student. And that's really the point I'm trying to get across here. Furthermore, something we'll talk about later is it seems they have a very organized like file folders for their for all their notes for each class maybe, or however they want to organize that. They have pens accessible right here, ready to go for when they need to work on that homework set or that online exam, right? And they need some scratch paper. This is just an awesome setup. So those are some of the maybe some advice for you guys when you're setting up your learning space. This is a kind of a model I would use. All right. So the next step, right? We have our desk, right? So we have our setup, but it doesn't really matter unless we know and we organize our time to be using it, right? So once we have our desk, the next step is setting up our time, right? And so I think the most important thing here is that you make a schedule. So this is not only a great tip to help you during virtual learning, help the student during virtual learning. This is an awesome skill they can develop that will be super helpful during their whole life. So I can say the hardest thing when I was continuing my education into the college level is organizing my time and developing, and I really appreciate that in high school, I was able to develop the ability to manage my own time. And so this is a skill that students can start on early. They're given this opportunity of virtual learning to start building that skill of time management. So the way students can do that, the first step, of course, is just like we set aside that part of the house for learning, students need to set aside a block of time for school. So, and again, this varies by student, right? So for grades 6 to 12 students, it's actually a lot of studies show that late afternoon to early evening is the time they're most awake. So again, if your school allows you and it doesn't have any in-person meetings or not as many in-person meetings, you can adjust your block of time for school to be whatever works for you. Just make sure it's the time you're most productive. So personally, I find that I'm most productive in the morning time. I like waking up early, getting a head start on the day, and really just getting my work done in the morning. And yeah, really just waking up. And so I found that that's when I'm most productive. But again, try different things, right? Try the morning time. If you're not a morning person, don't worry, try the afternoon time. And that's the awesome thing about virtual learning is that you can work and do school when you're most productive, right? And that's awesome, right? So again, we want to look at virtual learning not as like a horrible thing. It can be an opportunity, right? So if we use it in the right way, we can really maximize our potential here. All right. And then the second thing is, of course, once you set aside this block for time for school, again, it doesn't matter if you have this nice setup and this nice schedule, you got to use the schedule. So I think a great way to do this, of course, set an alarm and wake up on time. But the really awesome thing about school is it forces you to build a habit. So when you were in school, you had habits, right? You eat breakfast at this time. You leave for school at this time. You arrive to school at this time. And then you have kind of this habitual kind of process, right? So you can replicate that even though may not be leaving the house for virtual learning. Try to maybe wake up at the same time every day, eat breakfast at the same time every day, and get some exercise in the morning at the same time every day. Build those habits around your schedule. And so that then you kind of, when you get to school or you get to your computer for school, you feel like it's school, right? Everything makes sense. How the parent can help, I think a great way here is offering a kind of positive reinforcement or rewards to your child. So if they're sticking to their schedule, they're on time for school every day, they finish all their schoolwork that week, they meet all their deadlines, offer them a positive reward, more screen time, or whatever it may be, whatever dynamic exists in your family, offer them some sort of positive reward for doing everything on time. And then try to refrain. This is really important for the parents. I know with virtual learning, it can become more convenient, right? Or maybe having the kids at home is disrupting your schedule and you need to go to the grocery store every Tuesday at noon, right? Well, try to refrain from disrupting that schedule. So if they're working hard to set the schedule and stick to the schedule, it can really be disrupting that schedule to have to go do some sort of family event in the middle of the day. So I know that's super important. Just try not to disrupt that schedule that they've set, and that will help them stick to that schedule. And again, that will have overwhelming benefits for them if they can consistently stick to the same location and stick to the same schedule. Okay, so now we have our desk, we have our setup, and we have our schedule, and we're sticking to it, right? We're doing our schoolwork the same time every day, and we know what times we need to be online and whatnot. We have everything organized. We have our desk organized. What's the next step? Well, the next step would be reducing the distractions that exist around you. So this is a super important because as we talked about in the beginning, this is a big issue virtual learning poses for students. And this becomes more of an issue, especially for those younger age students, right? But even for the older age students, you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, just a button away when they're in virtual learning, right? So there's so many distractions, both like online, in person. It's super important that the students learn how to kind of reduce these distractions, and the parents can definitely help them along in that process. So the first thing I'd say is for students, really try your best, really try to focus. Remember, this is all about your progress, right? This affects you the most out of anyone involved. So really try to focus on your schoolwork during school time. And a great way to do that is set time in your block of school time for designated breaks. So be like, okay, I'm not going to go on any social media while I'm in class, but after class, I'm going to take a 30-minute break and I'll allow myself to go on social media and whatnot. And that can be like super important is that you have that schedule, but be like realistic with yourself when you're building that schedule. Set time for breaks, and that will be super, super important in getting you to stick to that schedule and reducing the distractions and then maximizing your productivity, right? All right. So how can the parent help with this? Well, the first thing I'd say is you know your student pretty well. So you can help them be honest with themselves, and you can make that list of things that often distract your child. Are they often on social media, often on YouTube, Netflix, Hulu? What are these distractions? Or maybe it's in like real in-person distractions, like if you have pets. I know when I have my dog in my room, it's hard to get a lot of work done because he's always like jumping on me and barking and whatnot. And so I know when I really want to be productive, I have to go in a different room for my dog. And so that could apply for any of you that have pets or other in-person distractions. Just try to limit those and know what they are so you can try to avoid them when those times you really need to be productive. Another great thing the parent can do is after you download an assignment, so maybe in the morning, if your school is not in like you have to be on Zoom or anything, in the morning, you can download all your assignments for the day onto the student's computer and then just turn off the Wi-Fi. So there's no way they can be having any of these social media or other virtual distractions during the time they're supposed to be working on school. And then at the end of the day, when they're finished with all their assignments, they turn them into you and you turn back on the Wi-Fi. And that can be just a great way, an easy, simple way to really reduce these distractions. Now, I did want to mention a couple other ways that you can, if maybe they have to be on Zoom and they have to be on the Wi-Fi for their classes. I know that's often the case. So a way you can limit their use of these social media and all these virtual distractions is blocking the screen time or setting a limit for their screen time. So this is a couple of screenshots from an iPad, but it's a very similar for any Apple product really. So you can just go on their device and you go to settings and then you go to screen time. And it will actually show you a breakdown of their screen time from the week before, what they were spending time on, whether it be like productivity, reading, or there's also a separate category for social media. And then you can also set a passcode and limit the amount of time they can use on certain apps. So again, you can use this as a kind of positive reinforcement. You give them an hour of time on their favorite social media day or whatever it may be. And then if they're on time throughout the week for their classes, you give them 2 hours on the weekend days for whatever works for you. But this is a tool you can use to definitely help reduce their distractions. Also, then if you click here on app limits, it takes you to this page. I just wanted to show you how to do it. And you can disallow some apps. So if there's some apps, if you have an iPad that's distinctly for school that they're using, or a computer distinctly for school, you can just turn off all of the social media apps right here with the allowed apps function. And that will let you really limit these students' distractions. And that's an awesome and definitely a very critical step you have to take to maximize your potential in virtual learning. Okay, so again, we have our perfect learning area, right? We have our desk all set up, we have our calendar, we have our schedule, our daily schedule set up, and now we've reduced the distractions around us. So what's the next step here? Well, I think the next step and another great skill these students can develop while virtual learning is how to use a planner. So using that planner, you not only need to know your daily schedule, you need to know your monthly schedule. When are the due dates? When are the midterms? When are each exam? When are your finals? When is everything due for school, right? I know when everything is online, it can become you're not reminded by the teacher every day maybe, or you're not seeing it on the board in school. You have to be able to know these deadlines on your own. Again, this is great preparation for post high school college and organizing your time in a professional career. This is a great skill you can develop. So I'm definitely most thankful that I was able to develop the use of a planner while I was in high school, and that was super helpful when I got to my college education. One of the skills I'm definitely most thankful for. So this is a great opportunity for students to develop this skill. And not only is it a great skill to develop, but it can be fun for artistic students um, to really express themselves with fun. Like I have an example of a planner here. It's like they're using cool calligraphy, they're using these colorful post-its. Yeah, it can just be a great way to kind of creatively express themselves and also while building this important skill that's useful and helps their productivity. So what the students can do is definitely, as I said, you need to know all of your deadlines for the whole semester, right? Beginning of the semester, first week of the semester, just make sure you know for each class what's due when, and especially those big projects and big exams, you need to have the list of all of those when you're starting to set up this planner, right? And then the next step is organizing your planner in a way that works best for you. So so the planner doesn't have to be by week or month. It can be whatever works for you. You can do a daily planner, weekly planner, monthly planner. Maybe your planner is like a huge poster on the wall that has the entire semester's days on it. Whatever works for you, right? But the important part is that you're planning out how you're going to reach these goals. So you're setting all these deadlines and then you're planning out the steps to reach that deadline. And again, this is where you're building your skills, right? So adapt this to what works for you and help maximize your potential, right? Okay, so how the parent can help, of course, purchase a planner for your child. They need some way to be organizing themselves. And then again, offer them rewards for finishing assignments early. So the other great thing about this planner and them building this planner is that it's an easy way for you to take a look at their planner and check if they're what their deadlines are. You can see, oh, you had these things due last week. Did you do them on time? How'd you do on them? It's a great way for you to check in and keep track of your students' progress without having to organize all of their deadlines. They're doing that, and you're just able to check in. And that's a great thing about this planner as well. And then, of course, you can offer them rewards for when they're finishing these assignments early because you'll know when the deadlines are, right? All right. So I want to show you guys an example of a great, awesome middle school planner that I took a picture of here. Um, and so this is from a middle school student, but you can see it's color coded. They have all of their what they're gonna do when broke down by time, and not only have this like time schedule, they also have some important like how to de-stress. They have a to-do list that they need to do each day, or maybe a weekly to-do list. So this is their daily schedule and their weekly to-do list. And then they have like maybe personal stuff that they want to achieve that week. And not only is it's so the first thing I say is it's color coded by class. That sticks out right away, right? And that's always super helpful. And then the handwriting, right? It's super neat and clear. Even on this kind of zoomed out image that's a little blurry, you can read almost everything. It's super well organized. And then it's also artistic and aesthetic. So like I said, this can be a fun activity that you do every week or every month that lets you just kind of be artistic a little bit and also be productive at the same time. And then, as I said, it's more than just a calendar, right? A planner is about planning out your goals for the week, and that's what it's really about. And so you want to have your calendar here, but you also want to have all of the extras, whatever that may be for you, whatever helps you meet your deadlines and be a productive student is really what this planner is about. So I wanted to offer you guys an awesome free resource that I've used for years. And if any of you have an iPad or anything, or just your computer, and you want to download some free calendar PDFs and then use that as your planner. That's what I've always done. I've always used an iPad for my classes, and so I just go on here each year, download a weekly calendar, and then I use that as my planner, and I just write directly on that on my iPad. And so I don't have to buy a new planner every year. And they have awesome, like so many different designs, and they're all just free PDFs, or you can get them as Word documents too. So you can just scan that QR code or go to this website, totally free. It's super useful. I highly recommend, and just a great free resource for all of you guys. All right, so let's get to our next tip now. So as I mentioned earlier, a really big issue with virtual learning is students aren't walking between classes, right? So the way you can kind of make up for that is making sure students are getting plenty of exercise outside of their schoolwork, right? So for students, what does this look like? Well, maybe you get up and move around during your breaks. So as I said, schedule those breaks into your day, and just get up and move around during them. Don't just stay, like, if during your break or after school you're just staying on your computer and clicking to Hulu or Netflix or something. It's going to be a very monotonous day. You're going to not get a lot of exercise. It's going to be hard to get good sleep at night, and then you're not going to be ready for the next day, right? So exercise is a super important part that's often overlooked for virtual learning. Along with that, I highly recommend for students, go outside after schoolwork. Go get some exercise after or even before schoolwork. And this can be super important, and especially for the younger kids, just have fun, right? Like, make sure you're still running around playing. It doesn't have to be all just on your computer, right? Make sure you're up and moving around. That's super important. How the parent can help, definitely block out time when your child's building their schedule. Make sure they block out time designated for exercise. And then a lot of parents are working virtually as well. So this same principle definitely applies to them, to you guys. So I'd say a great way to kind of solve that for both you and the kids is going on some kind of family exercise, whether it be walks or runs every day. Just getting that 60 minutes of exercise for both the parents and the kids, I promise you, will be super useful and super helpful. So what we do here at Think Academy actually is, so we have breaks, maybe a 10-minute break during each of our classes, and we put on a video of just a exercise video during those breaks for the students to do, just to get around, get their blood pumping, stay energized, and get ready for that second half of the class. And so this is a great thing that you can try to adapt into your online virtual school, is just moving around during those breaks, right? All right, so the last tip I want to talk about today, as I mentioned earlier, it can be super difficult during virtual learning to track students' progress, right? It's harder to administer exams. It's harder to administer like honest or fair exams, right? And then also you're having less face-to-face interactions with the teacher, so it's harder for them really to track your progress and get to know how well you're doing in that class. So I would say it's super important that you keep track of your progress throughout your virtual semester, right? So as a student, definitely take note of where you excel and where you struggle. And just on your own, be honest with yourself and work harder at the topics or the subjects or the classes that you're struggling with. This is all about your progress. So this is a huge step you can take that will help your progress, is just being honest with yourself and working harder at those things you're struggling with. How the parent can help, I would say this is the really important guiding principle here, is don't track your students' grades. Again, because these tests aren't going to be as easy for the teachers to administer, and they're not going to be as accurate of a representation of the students' learning. You need to be tracking your child's understanding. So again, how you can do that is use their planner and ask them about what they're learning. Hey, what'd you learn in this class? Oh, I saw you had this exam. How was it? Was it difficult? How'd you do on it? And just keeping aware of their understanding of the knowledge points they're building. And then I think for STEM classes specifically, kind of third-party evaluations can be a great way to track development. So make sure they're being evaluated throughout the semester is super important, and a great way for you to track their development. So here at Think Academy, we offer free one-on-one middle school math evaluation. So for any of you, maybe anywhere between 4th to 8th grade, this is a great evaluation for you to take. And it'll be a 40-minute online exam that they take before the evaluation. And then they'll get a chance to meet one-on-one on Zoom with one of our highly qualified teachers. And that teacher will go through each question in the exam with them, kind of get an idea of their understanding of the questions. And then after that, the parent and the teacher will meet and on Zoom again, and the teacher will give you a great sense of the feedback and kind of like where the child's strengths and weaknesses are and what they really need to work on. And then not only what they need to work on, but how they can work on it. So you'll get a customized and comprehensive like study plan for the student going forward and where they can work on to really excel and get up to the level they need to be at. So this is, again, a great way during the virtual learning semester to be able to test your students' ability and how they can improve, right? So I definitely say scan this QR code or check out this link and sign up for one of these. It just is an hour-long one-on-one meeting with one of our teachers, and it'll be a great way to just see where you're at, right? Another thing, if you want to see you want a chance to experience high quality virtual learning, we have our Think Academy trial class this weekend, this Sunday actually. It's just $5. It's typically $40, and we have it one class for grades kindergarten to grade 1 or grade 2. That's here on the left, 1 to 145 this Sunday, and it's just $5. And then we have maybe grades 4 to 5 trial class this Sunday, 4 to 4:45 p.m. And again, that one's only $5. And you can sign up with this link right here, thethinkacademy.com/bm/trial-class. Or you can scan this QR code. Again, it's a great chance to see what really experienced and thorough and effective virtual classroom is like. So I'd highly recommend it. Yeah, if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask in the chat. But now we're going to have just an open question and answer time. So please go ahead and ask in the chat any specific or follow-up questions you may have in the comment section for this video. All right, so I have one question from Allegra Carrillo. How much help should I be giving my child on their homework? I don't want to do it for them, but I also don't want them falling behind, so how do I balance those? So I think the really important thing here is knowing the age of your child. So you definitely want to reach out to the teacher and see, find out what your student's struggling on and reach out to the teacher to address those concerns, right? So you don't want to be helping them too much, but you definitely want to be kind of guiding them, right? So again, this is all about building understanding. So if you can kind of guide them to the answers rather than just giving them the answers and doing the homework for them, that's the important concept. But if your student's struggling with something, a specific subject, reach out to the teacher and ask. Maybe they have extra resources you can use with your child to help beef up and really help their understanding in that topic. All right, so I'm going to wait around for a couple minutes just to see if we have any other questions in the chat box. But yeah. And if not, then I will go ahead and show you guys this last slide here. And so this is just if you have any questions or follow-up information that you want, you can add me on WeChat here on the left, or you can join our Telegram page, and we post daily middle school math prep resources on there. So you can scan that QR code, join our Telegram, or add me on WeChat to reach out to me directly. But yeah, please let me know if you guys have any questions. It's been such a pleasure, and I'll keep an eye on the chat box in case any questions come up. But all right, thank you guys so much, and have a good night.